Good evening. Welcome to Hobby Hotline number 175. I'm Uncle Rich. With me is King NASCAR, Logan Ward, and
Hey,
Great
everybody.
Cards, Ryan Nolan.
How's it
And
going?
we have some interesting topics to talk about. And let's lead off with a card that Ryan discovered this week, a Jason Verlander card that's a quote autographed by PSA with one small problem. And so Ryan can talk to us about that and how he found it.
Yeah, so I wasn't the original source of it. I actually found it first on Reddit. Someone posted this on there. And essentially what happened is, if you guys aren't familiar with Topps Baseball, they had a insert set called Through the Years. And what they did is they had a card in the center, like a reprinted card of an iconic Topps card, and then had a border around the outside of it. So people didn't really mistake it of being the actual card. However, when these first came out, since there's a lot of new people to the hobby, they assumed that small card within the center was the actual card. That's why in the past you'd see some Otani cards or Mike Trout or any other of the stars or even Tatis go for $50 to $100 on these cards. Yet they're just a common insert card that are in a pack. No relics, no autograph cards. One thing that was good is Topps on the back said twice that this is not an autograph card. There's no relics associated with it. Everything is reprinted. They posted it twice on the back in large font, which I give props to Topps for, because in the past, just showing the video, sometimes they reprinted cards. The only thing they changed was the year at the bottom. So you have to literally look at the card on the back and make sure that nothing else changed. Moral of the story, though, someone decided to get this card graded through PSA DNA. They get the autograph, a specific grade, and it passed. They gave it a trading card, and they gave it a PSA DNA authentic and got it slabbed up, and then it listed on eBay where it started getting bids. And then from there, like, obviously it's not an autograph card, it's literally an insert card that has no autograph of Justin Verlander himself on it.
You know, and I will say one thing. People make mistakes.
Absolutely.
I mean, trust me, I go through correction requests at ComC. There are some things that pop up that I see that's like, how did I miss this? People make mistakes, and granted, it was an obvious thing, but you know, with the volume of cards PSA is grading, there are going to be some errors. That doesn't excuse it, but that helps explain that, hey, you know, sometimes you just miss things. As long as it's made right, then I'm fine. I'm not saying I'm fine with the error, but I'm fine with the correction as long as it gets dealt with correctly. I mean, we have a PSA Hall of Famer here, legitimately. He spoke at the PSA function at the National. So, Logan, you are actually closer to this than we are, you know, with what goes on at PSA. Not that you're there and have a lot of inside sources, but you're very, very much a PSA person. So a few words from you would be wonderful.
Yeah, it's like what you said. Everybody makes mistakes. Now, is it possible that this card has a sticker autograph on it? I'm just curious.
There's not, because I looked at the exact same that wasn't graded. I put the autographs side by side and showed like the inflection points on the autograph. It lined up perfectly.
Okay.
And the reason I asked earlier before you got here was the Chrome card does have an autograph on the card. His rookie Chrome is autographed.
Well, going back to this thing being authenticated, I will have to say, and it's like what you said, Rich, they go through tens of thousands of cards every day. Mistakes are going to happen. I don't know how this one got through, but one thing you can bet on is that PSA, they have a authenticity guarantee, and they will make it right no matter what. So that's one thing that you can say for them. So it's terrible that it got through, but again, I'm not perfect. I don't know any person that is perfect, and things slip through the cracks. I mean, I know I make mistakes in my job, and it happens.
No, 100%. I think that's where the community is out there, because if someone posted it, then I made a video talking about it. Other people posted it as well. It just alerts people out there like, hey, there's a mistake that happens with it. I'm sure PSA is going to pull the cert, and then that way no one gets affected by it.
Well, I was telling Rich earlier, I don't think you were on, Ryan, but a couple of years ago at the National, there was a friend of mine who pulled me aside. He was looking at a Dale Earnhardt autographed card, And back in the day, Press Pass did the same exact thing with Dale Earnhardt inserts. They took an old card and put it, on a card, and on the back it said it was, not an authentic autograph and all that. But he's looking at it, and the guy is trying to sell this as a real auto. And I told him, I said, that is not a real autograph. He goes, are you sure? I said, I am 100% sure that is not a real auto. So, those things can happen, to the best of us. And this guy that I'm talking about, he's been collecting a long time. So he knew, at least I thought he knew, but, one was getting ready to get past him. It just so happened I happened to step up at the right time.
And didn't you say, with the PSA guarantee, that should taking care of the cert? And there was another card that popped up that I will almost guarantee you PSA is going to remove the cert from as well. And that's a Tom Brady signed card that sold for $54,000 that, according to what I saw on Sports Collectors Daily this morning, that sale has already been voided. So Kenny Golden immediately said when he saw the story that we're not going to sell that card. And some great detective work by, and I forgot who the person was, that went through and explained why the card was not, went from the 6 to the 8. The autograph was probably a 9 on both cards. It's just that the rest of the card got improved.
Yeah, I think it was something sports cards. That's actually his name. But great work over there on that side of things. And like as a larger auction house, I mean, that's 100% the right move. If you found it being altered, you have to pull that card, because otherwise your customer base becomes really weary on that side of things. Like, oh, you're not going to pull a card if it got altered or if it's a bad card within the auction house. No, Golden also did that with I can't remember if it was a Topps Chrome Kobe Bryant or when the anniversary NBA 50s of Kobe Bryant or something like that. The slab ended up being fake, and they did the same thing. Even the auction was like 6+ months ago. They ended up voiding it, refunded the person that purchased the card. So that's right. What you need to. That's a good thing.
Right. And Kenny Golden, and if you know Kenny, he had some rough parts in the hobby. In the 90s, after Scoreboard left, there were some questionable things he's done. And from that point on, he has tried to make it a point to be so above board that there's if something goes wrong, he says, I'm going to fix it immediately. And that's a lot to his credit for, where he was and where he is now. And that's a lot to be said. We all make mistakes. And as I pointed out earlier, it's what you do when there's a mistake that's the most important thing to go on.
That's very true. That's very true. I mean, we've seen some other issues in the hobby here recently. I'm not going to go into specifics, where people have not come out and talked about the issue at hand or tried to deflect it. And that just makes it worse.
Yes. And one of those issues that came up was a Fleer box that got opened at 86-87 Fleer box that got opened at the National. Now, you got the 3 Jordans out of the box. The problem was some of the packs didn't have the original collation out of the box. Plus, we discovered during that period, and it was in the letter, so we will, I'm going to say that Steve Hart said these were not all the original packs from a box from a sealed case. There were a couple packs added that he didn't like. So, and the letter says that. So let's understand that was spoken, but the packs weren't in the proper order and whatnot. And Kenny Golden again. So Kenny's on a roll. Everybody who got that, by the way, that was a free break from what I understand at the National too. That was a giveaway.
Yeah.
You didn't pay money for that. But to make it even more right for those people, they're going to go through one of Kenny Golden's stock of Fleer boxes. I don't know how many, but if you remember, he opened one with Drake recently that was correct in terms of the collation and the sequencing and the 3 Jordans and 3 everything out of the box. And everybody's going to get another pack.
Yep. That's interesting. It's another BBC exchange box. So hopefully it is 100% correct. I know. Does he have like a case or something like that he was opening up?
I suspect remember, Kenny's been around a long time. I suspect he's got things we don't know about.
Those boxes were cheap back in the day too.
Scoreboard had some really cool things back in the day. They were very innovative.
Yeah, I mean, he even sold NASCAR autographs back in the day. I'm not trying to make this a NASCAR show, but just saying that he did that back in the day.
So we'll see tomorrow night.
So those are three of the biggest stories we had. But I also want to start talking about things that are more generally related. And if our engineer, who's wonderful in the background, John has asked to be just our background engineer tonight, can post the link on the screen if he can for people to call in or make comments. One thing I wanted us to talk about tonight was negotiation at card shows. Some dealers will, some won't, and sometimes it may depend on the venue you're at. I'm running a show in 10 days, 12 days, 14 days, whatever it is, at my synagogue. Those tables cost $25 a day. It's a little easier to negotiate if you're driving locally and you're paying $25 for a table. You have a little more flexibility. You go to a national, it's costing you $3,000 to $5,000 minimum unless you live like 10 minutes away for the whole show. That's a big nut to crack. If I had to pay $5,000, I might be really seriously second thought about any negotiation. If I'm paying $25 for the day, it's like, hey, I take, if I make a sale for $100 and I took $25 off or $30 off, I just made my day and I don't have to worry as much. So I'm just curious as to all of your opinions as to negotiations. And I'd love to, hear from our crowd and hear from, call in and hear from our, panel as well.
Well, at the National, I don't think either one of you guys were at the National, but a lot of dealers had cards, at comp prices or higher. And I'm thinking that, given the recent downtrend in pricing, that a lot of these dealers are into these cards way more than they want to be. And they're not willing to negotiate as much because, they don't want to, they're going to try to cut their losses.
Ryan, you travel to a show almost every weekend.
That is true. So honestly, it's kind of a flip of a coin. Like even at some of the small shows, I run into dealers that will not take off anything. Like my price is my price. Like this weekend when I was in Apopka, there's a dealer. I mean, I bought a lot off of him. He told me beforehand, I'll do 25% off sticker because he had a deal in his boxes. It was like 25% off if you buy more than 10. So I got a stack of like, I don't know, it's like 40, 50 cards. I tried taking a little bit more off. Nope, that's my price. Even at other card shows as well. Like I went to another one or other Florida shows that were super small, built out a full stack, like the Aaron Judges. Nope, that is my price. I already discounted to you when I gave you those initial prices. And I'm not complaining, right? Like I understand the numbers and everything like that, but each dealer does it differently. In my perspective, like as a buyer at these shows, take a little bit off because like as a customer, I will continue to go back to those dealers that will work with you. If you're like super tough on comps or don't even discount it in the beginning, it makes me less likely to go back to that table and look at the inventory or look through the value bins. It's like, well, I'm paying sticker. There's no opportunity for me to bulk things out or like buy a large amount of cards. And I know other people that are like that as well. Like if a dealer doesn't give out discounts or work with you on pricing, there's no need to even look at that table. I mean, even taking off 5% or 10% won't kill the margins. There's a lot of dealers that still have cards well before 2020 or 2019. Like they've had these cards for 20 years and they still don't sell because they're either way over comps or they just like, I'd rather just show it as a museum. Like even at the National, like a lot of the vintage stuff there that I saw was 50% over like some of the last comps, and dealers are like, it'll sell. It didn't sell because I'm sure it'll be there the next National as well. But so many people are just so attached to cards. They're like, once they see a high price, they think it will get back to that price rather than making some deals or other opportunities happen.
Ryan, you mentioned it, in your little thing about Aaron Judge. Well, Aaron Judge may be a different case right now. He's got 48 homers. If I had Aaron Judge cards for sale, I probably would not be discounting them at this point either. Now, maybe somebody like Pete Alonso, who's having a nice year, but not a 48 homer year, I might discount him. So isn't it some of that also whom you're asking about?
No, that's definitely fair on that point. I was just trying to make the argument that if you're going to spend a few $1,000s, you can knock off a little bit, even though there is a little bit of a discount. And I'm not knocking the dealers, right? Like I get it. Like I'm already getting the discount or other people are already getting discount. stay firm to your price because you're going to make more money on that side of things. Same from the buyer perspective, if someone's going to drop money, try to give them a little bit of a discount because they're going to continue to go back to your table or be one of the first tables that you go to. Like, I know a lot of people, if you get deals from a dealer, you're going to, first time you go to a show, beyond looking at new dealers, you're going to go back to the dealers that treated you the best, and you're going to continue to buy from them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, for me personally, going through the National, I didn't really have much issue of people dealing with me. I did get, some certain percentages knocked off my prices, but, I ran into a lot of people that told me that, especially on like some old vintage and things like that they were going to these dealers and they said that the dealers were not coming off their prices at all.
All that happened a ton.
Yeah, so I didn't. Like I said, me personally, I did not run into that. But again, like I talked to Mike Moynihan, I think he had that happen to him and several other people.
Yeah, it's honestly, so like from traveling to shows, the Northeast shows tend to be the toughest with vintage dealers like not taking off prices. Midwest, I've noticed the dealers are very like loose on prices. You bulk stuff out, they work great with you. Dallas is also pretty good on that side of things, like some of the Texas shows I've gone to. But it's always the Northeast. It's super tough because dealers are so firm on stuff, and you always find mantles that are double the value.
Right, and there is, and some dealers may also have a store, and they don't have to negotiate in the store either. So if you don't negotiate in the store, why negotiate at a show?
That's true.
And so, and as I said, we're seeing some great comments from, from our viewers, and that's wonderful to see. Are they 50? Hey, Pete Alonso, Topps Chrome rookies, 50 cents each. That's
you can
good.
find stuff. I know you went through the dollar bin, or you go through the dollar boxes at the National. I know you didn't go this year, but in the past you have found some great stuff in there.
Yeah, well, the best one I ever pulled was a $300 card that I ended up splitting with the dealer. So that was pretty good. And he, and trust me, as I've told the story, it was like, he's an old friend of mine. He's a deacon or a minister in his church. It's like, you can't, and I know him 25 years, you can't do that to him. You tell him, hey, I told him, Joe, if it's a $15 card and it's a dollar box, I'm taking it. A $300 card?
What card was?
And we ended up splitting it, so it worked out very well. He got $150 for a card that he would have sold for $1. Yeah, and Herman's right. There are dealers that won't budge. It also depends, and it depends on what you pull. I think that's part of it too.
There was one $3 box dealer that did not come off prices. He said it's $3 a card no matter what. And I know Val and I, we bought a bunch of cards. He had a couple boxes of racing cards, and we pulled out quite a few. And once we found out he wasn't giving any discounts, we put a few back because we thought, hey, if he's going to knock something off, we'll get all these. But when he said he wasn't, so we put some back.
Yeah, that tends to happen too. It's like at the end of the day, the numbers will work out if you're continuing to buy. I like it's 100% understand it from the dealer's perspective, but just take a little bit off because you're going to get customers for life. Customer service is one of the most important things. At the end of the day, everyone has cards, and a lot of the tables nowadays, modern wise, they're all the same things. So the customer service is a differentiator at the shows.
Yeah, I mean it's true in everything else. I mean, just for example, there are restaurants here in town that if I get good customer service, I go back. If I don't go back. And that works the same way for cards and dealers.
Cooter's right. You can always offer. As he says, the worst thing somebody can tell you is no. And sometimes they'll tell you yes, and sometimes they'll tell you why no. As I pointed out with Aaron Judge earlier. Hey, he's got 48 homers. Let's not discount him. Okay, fair enough. Yep. I guarantee you almost everybody's discounting Fernando Tatis cards at this point.
Yeah.
It's funny. A lot of the people with the Tatis cards are like, man, I took them out of my display, took them out of here because I'm not going to have people offering 20% or 10% on the cards. It's not even worth that negotiations. Don't want to deal with it. Just taking them out. Multiple dealers have done that already.
Right. And to me, that's the right thing to do. I remember this was years ago on a blowout forum. People were starting to talk about something with Bryce Harper. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I will pay you 10% of guide for any Bryce Harper card you want to send me. You know how many cards I got out of that offer?
None.
They were all both okay. Put your money. I'm putting my money where your mouth is. Let's go for it. Nah.
So Rich, on ComC, have you seen more Tatis cards, or have you seen people pulling them off, or have you
I've been
noticed?
working on a project, so I haven't been doing a lot of ID work recently, so I haven't seen what comes in. But so I don't know what's coming in. So I can't tell you that, but I'm sure we are getting more Tatis cards. But we're getting more cards of everybody. So, I know that when we set up at the Dallas Card Show, we're getting 25 to 30,000 cards at each show. I know that they're doing the Burbank show at the end of next weekend. Ryan, are you going to the Burbank show?
I'm not. There's actually 5 card shows that are all like 100 to plus table. Actually, there's like 5 or 6 card shows that are 100 plus tables happening across the country. I decided to book Denver a while ago because I haven't been to Colorado before, and I was going to go there, then check out a concert after and spend 2 days there. But no one's going to Denver, which I was kind of surprised. It's supposed to be 400 tables.
Yeah, that's our friend Mike Fruitman's show with I believe with his, and so that should be a good show too. I mean, there are some huge shows.
Yeah, so you have Burbank, right? Which I figure that's gonna be mostly modern basketball. I don't really deal with modern basketball, so it's not really the environment that I'd do best at. Then you have Denver. Then you have Kansas City, which I haven't been to Kansas City, so I can't talk about it. Then there's a show in Chicago as well that's 100 plus tables. There's a company that's putting that together. Can't remember their names off the top of my head. Then you also have the East Coast National in New York. So you have all those happening this weekend. And I'm sure there's like 1 or 2 other shows that I'm forgetting, but this is one of the biggest weekends of national shows that people are traveling to.
That's pretty amazing. East Coast National is 400 tables too, 400, 500 tables. I mean, think about it. That's 2,000 tables of all those shows.
And that doesn't even include all the small local shows that are in different markets. Like in Florida, I know there's 2 or 3 shows at least happening this weekend that are between 50 and like 80 tables. And I know there's probably other shows in like Georgia or North Carolina. And think about all these different states that have their own local shows that are going that people aren't going to travel out to. And it's a great thing to see, the more card shows out there. The only concern with the more card shows out there is having too many shows in a local market. Like within Florida, there's now 2 shows that happen sometimes on the same weekend that are 10-minute drives. So that splits the audience in half between going to those and also the dealers.
Yeah, well, and since Bo is one of our group, we should definitely mention his 125 table show on John Nolan Drive in Madison, Wisconsin, that he has built up from a 15 table show about 1.5 years ago. So there's a lot to be said for that. So we definitely need to promo the Madison show
as well.
So, and that's interesting because this, that shows the hobby is doing just fine. I mean, we talk about the blips in the hobby, but Logan, have you ever seen that many big shows in the same weekend?
Not in a long time. Gosh, we all remember a time when there weren't any card shows at all. And like the National was like the only thing that anybody ever went to, since, eBay really kind of took over. But now, especially since the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of card shows. I mean, we had our local card show last weekend, and it's bi-monthly. So we only have one promoter. So that's the only one that gets any traction around here. But it's grown from like maybe a 20 table show to like an 80 table show. So it's actually gotten to be a very nice little show.
Yeah, isn't that great? I mean, at my old synagogue show, which used to be 45 to 50 tables, is because we moved to a new building. We cannot put in more than 25 tables at the most. So I actually now am doing that as a family friendly stop in, say hi. It's not going to be big. It's, you're not going to have pressure. So I'm actually going sort of retrofitting that show to a new place. So I'm actually going against the grain, and I'm going smaller where everybody else is going bigger, which is an interesting concept.
Yeah. And our show here, it has room to grow. I mean, the facility that it's in, he could probably easily add another 20 or 30 tables in there. And I think, that's his plan long-term is to grow it, but he just doesn't want to just go from 80 to 100 overnight. He just wants to, incrementally do it. But, talking about going to the shows, I went last weekend, and of course everybody knows I collect the NASCAR stuff. And there was just very little there, of course. But I go there because it's time with my son. He collects, and it's also time to see all my friends. I have a lot of friends in the community here, and it's from that aspect. It's for me, it's really fun.
And Ryan, you travel almost every weekend. How do you determine, because you're flying, so you have to make decisions in advance, because eventually it sounds like you're going to get to enough where you can eventually do some frequent flyer trips. But you have to make decisions in advance to get decent airfares, decent hotel costs, unless you know somebody to stay with.
Yeah.
What's some of your thought processes in choosing a show to go to?
Honestly, right now, some of it's kind of random. I mean, like the ones that were happening this weekend, I haven't been to Colorado yet. So I was like, all right, I want to knock out Colorado because eventually I want to go to a card show in all 50 states. So this is like state 24 or 25, almost halfway done with that. And some others, like if I've gone to the show already or know the market, like where the show is going to be at, kind of determine. Like if there's a big show in Ohio, tends to be a pretty big vintage presence. So I try to go to those. No, Xenia is more of a modern show there. I do want to still check it out. But the other large Ohio shows, like you're going to see 70% of dealers that have that type of stuff, and also some oddball like food and beverage cards, which I like. So try to do on that side of things. A lot of the shows I go to are still local in Florida. We just have so many card shows everywhere between the east and west coast of Florida, all the way from Jacksonville down to Miami. And being in Orlando, like besides Miami, like everything's like a 2-hour drive. So I figure, okay, I'll drive 2 or 3 hours to go somewhere, go to a card show and be done with it. It's not really too bad. You do see the same dealers over and over again, which is a little bit of fatigue, but traveling out of state once or twice a month kind of resets it.
Right. Well, Dallas is always, when I moved here, even though there were a decent amount of shows because it was 1990, Dallas was always more of a store town in those days. And even though the stores eventually retrenched, as Logan said, when we didn't have a lot of shows or stores, we would go months without shows. And we had a few stores that survived and, moved on. And now we have a lot of stores again, and we have a few shows. And it's, again, Dallas is interesting because Dallas has always been more of a store area than a show area. And yet we've had 2 nationals and we have the Dallas Card Show. So, I mean, that's a fascinating conundrum change. And Logan, I don't know how the stores are in your area, or is it just you like to go to?
We've got, well, up until recently, we only had 2 LCSs. We have one small one here where I live in the suburb I live in, and there's another one in another suburb. But since then, we've had 2 more open up. So now we're at 4. But I can distinctly remember back, in the late 80s, early 90s, that we had at least 20 LCSs in Memphis, in the Memphis area.
Well, we used to have a magazine, like basically just focusing solely on DFW stores. It was on newsprint, but in the early 90s, it lasted about 2 or 3 years, and it focused solely on stores. It had interviews with the stores. It had features on the stores. It had ads from the stores. It was all stores. It was really a cool concept. Ryan, are there any stores that you go to near you? Or are the shows you go to sufficient for your purpose?
I don't really go to stores. I find a lot less deals there than at the card shows themselves. And already going to the card shows, that's like pretty exhausting itself. But I was going to say, it's kind of interesting to see the hobby going back towards more stores. Obviously, with like having eBay and other online places to sell cards, it's declined a lot over the years. My dad owned a store in the 90s, and he told me like back in the Tampa area, there was like 20 plus stores at a time. And like growing up, I knew there was like maybe 2 or 3 really. And like over the last year or 2 years, the Tampa area has grown into more stores. Same with Orlando as well. There's another like 2 or 3 stores that popped up in Orlando. So I'll be curious to see if they start going to 10, 15, 20 stores in an area again. But I wouldn't say I can't see it happening because of all the different online marketplaces that you can sell stuff. But it definitely seems like a lot of people are trying to open up stores so that they can get wax and make money on that side of things.
Well, do you guys think that, with the way eBay has progressed and all the fees and things that go along with it, plus, the taxes and all that other thing that go with eBay, you think that's helped both the card shows and the LCSs?
I think it has. I mean, especially with the card shows, people love trading. They love wheeling and dealing. Like people can go to a show with $100 and come back with $300 or $400 worth of cards and have a fun time doing it. It's like It's not a job. It's a hobby for a lot of people. Go through some bargain bins, find that $300 card or find those $15 cards, move those into another trade for a bigger card, and hang out with friends. Like, it's a social aspect of it. You also have like the side hustle, like you can make money at these type of shows, and it's a big hobby for a lot of people as well. And you blend all those aspects into it. That's why the card show scene is alive. Card shop scene, again, this is my own opinion because I don't really go to card shops as much, but I think people mostly go to card shops to buy wax there, so they don't have to buy it online with all the extra fees, rip it there. And then there's also trade nights, which brings the community together, and everyone can go in there, trade, have fun, have some snacks, drink, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, we had our first ever trade night last weekend after our card show here. I didn't go. I just didn't have time to go, but I heard it was a very good, very big success. So that's good.
Well, Kyle Robertson, and I missed this because I forgot about it, and I then didn't see the post until the day afterwards. But on Saturday at his card store, Kyle had a trade day at his Dallas Card Show card store. And I went there Monday or Tuesday this week, and I dropped off the ComC check for the next Dallas Card Show. But I also stayed there for about an hour. I knew there were a couple people. There's a postman I know who buys 70s cards from me. And so we were chatting. So, John, yes, you have competition on somebody who buys my 70s cards. And you're good too. So both of you are good 70s people. So I like that. And, he collects, but he enjoys sorting cards, dealing. And I just sat there to watch. And 5 different people within an hour walked in trying to sell different things to the card store. One of the things there is, it depends on the card store. Like Kyle has I'm going to use the word looser policy than some stores about buying things. He wants to see anything that comes in. And he's got a staff. And so there were 5 different people within an hour bringing things into the store.
I think that's the best way too. Like, a lot of people pass on anything. Like, I've gone to card shops before and overheard them. Oh, if it's junk wax era, anything in the 1990s, I'm not going to take a look at it. I'm like, it's kind of stupid because you still have PMGs, you still have lower serial numbered refractors and different things like that throughout the era. If you're going to completely disregard like 1990s cards or 1980s cards, in the 80s, you're going to forget about all the different Tiffany cards. You're literally passing up potential opportunities. 9 out of 10 times, is it going to be junk wax? Most likely. But there's still other opportunities. You can't just blindly say, oh, I don't want to waste time looking at it.
Well, at 10 for a penny, which used to be my standard offer pre-pandemic, I figured I could never get hurt on a overproduced era card. Even if it was terrible, all I would do then is say, okay, I'll just put them all in the synagogue box. And I did that a lot. If I might pull out, if it was a 10 for a penny deal, I might pull out 1% or 0.5% of the cards for me and just put the rest in the synagogue thing, including 98% of the Hall of Famers and whatever else, because let's make sure the people who are getting the free cards get something good. But I didn't like to turn down that, but I understand stores can get overwhelmed with that, and you need a place to pawn off, so to speak, those cards.
Well, living here in Memphis, Donruss used to be based here in Memphis. And even these days, still now, my LCSs, they tell me stories of all these people who used to work for Donruss, executives, employees, and whatnot that are bringing in, and he's buying them cases of unopened 1991 Donruss baseball or whatever. But there's still a market for that. He's always selling it, and he's always buying it. Now, keep in mind, he's not paying a lot of money for it, and he lets them know straight up that, hey, you guys ran this product 24/7. And this is what I'll pay, and and they'll sell it. So it's really amazing some of the things that he gets. He's got a stock room in the back full of cases of Donruss cards. It's amazing.
Well, I will tell you, in Dallas, we had ProSect. And for years, when there was a couple of years I wasn't working, and I would go to garage sales, and at least once every 2 or 3 months, I'd meet somebody who had some and I'm going to use the term and put it in air quotes, interesting ProSect cards. Not, stuff, errors or things that come out. And every once in a while, one of the vendors or a couple of the vendors I know who are now in the Starlight room with me at the Dallas Card Show, they'd come up with all sorts of stuff from ProSet. So we got a lot of ProSet stuff that drifted around for the exact same reason you're talking about the Donruss stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It stayed in the area for 20 years. ProSet hired a lot of people. And, Score Pinnacle, there's stuff from 97 Pinnacle that hung around for 20, 25 years too. It was the same thing. It hung around. Ryan, it's too bad you never had a card company in Florida.
But I will say, I mean, when you travel too, you can see some of the local food and beverage releases in their respective markets. That's kind of cool to see sometimes.
Yeah, well, one of the things when I worked for Dr. Beckett and I was editing the almanac, means I was looking for almanacs cards, was that a lot of times I go to an area, okay, I need that. And these were $5 and $10 sets, and they were adding to the company's, knowledge base. I could put them in a book so people could say, I'm adding new sets. I was adding maybe 250 new sets a year, which isn't bad considering it was a, night and weekend project for me. And it was kind of fun to get all these cards in there. The last time I went to Canada, which was 1997, I introduced myself to somebody. Well, by the end of the show, I had to borrow money from Jim because I bought so many Toronto Blue Jays sets. If you ever look in the almanac and want to know why we have so many 1996 and 7 Blue Jay sets in the Beckett almanac, it's because I bought them all at a 1997, Toronto National Expo. And people were coming to me by the end of the show with, do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need this? Oh, that's cheap. Yes. That's too much money. I can't spend $200 on that. Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, but you're right. There's stuff out there, Ryan. And Logan sees it too. I bet you Logan's seen some interesting. It's too bad Donruss never did racing for you back in the day. Otherwise, you probably have some of the really coolest Donruss racing cards out there.
Yeah, I've been contemplating telling the story while we've been talking, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it. I remember this is back in the 90s, early 90s, and I was at one of our LCSs, and a lady walks in, and she asked the guy, the owner of the shop, do you buy cards? And he goes, well, yeah, it just depends on what it is. The lady reached in her blouse like this, pulled out some autographed Donruss cards. And of course they were ruined. They were, oh God, they were just sweaty. We'll just say that. And of course the guy there goes, no, thank you. But those are the kind of things that he said he saw a lot of, that, stuff was getting out the doors, and, there's I'm sure there's a lot of autograph cards that people, never got because of that.
Well, and sometimes if you worked in the customer service area, especially Donruss ended up going out of business eventually, but if you worked in the customer service area, things can also, and I'm going to just use the term, get misplaced, and not deliberately either. It happens. And you would end up with a card that, how did I get this? Or the company might give you some of these cards as a holiday bonus or a gift. They may have given their employees cards. We don't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2001, Topps did for their employees, they gave them a bonus of a factory set. And they were all stamped like employee edition.
The Ichiro rookies in there. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, David Adams was already lined up. They had already lined up David Adams to pay everybody who wanted to sell it immediately to cash in X amount of dollars as an immediate cash in. It was like a bonus without being a bonus.
Well, I'll tell you another quick story here real quick. That recent find of unopened wax that had the 1948 Bowman unopened packs, and you remember that find?
Yes.
That came from here.
That was like 3 or 4 years ago. I remember that.
Yeah, it was. And what happened was, of course, the owner of the LCS that the people brought the cards to was not there that day, and some of the other people were there. And the guy brought him all these boxes in like I think it was like a Stroh's or a Pabst Blue Ribbon beer box, right? And the guys took a look at it and they go, there's nobody here that can afford that. And they turned the guy on to, was it Mile High? I think it was.
Yes, I think so.
The Mile High had to turn him on to Mile High. Of course, the guy who owned the LCS, gosh, he wished he'd been here. He said he would have gone to the bank and bought them immediately. But what happened with those cards was the guy that brought them in, he said he got them from his aunt, and she apparently had passed away. These unopened boxes had been sitting in the bottom of her closet in her house, for all these years. And she was the wife of, I don't know if it was Russell or who is it? The Donruss guys. It's Russ and the Wieners. This is Don and Russ Wiener. Anyway,
well, that explains why the company is called Donruss.
Yeah. Well, that's how they came up with it, was they're Don and Russ Wiener. But apparently she was the wife, I think, of one of those guys. And the cards had just sat there in the bottom of their closet for all these years until she passed away. And then, of course, they're going through the house and they find all these cards. And yeah, there's a picture of it right there. It's just absolutely amazing.
How far away you're in Memphis. How far away are you from Paris, Tennessee?
Oh gosh, it's not far. I've driven to it before. Yeah, I know what you're getting ready to say. That's another guy. Of course, I think was it Mr. Mint that bought all those?
It was Mr. Mint that bought them. They were 54s, 54 and 55 Bowman, and 60 tops. Why it's 60 tops? Why it's a 5-year wait? I'm still curious about. I can understand why the 2 years, but 60 tops was the third group of packs. Because I actually opened some of the 60 tops packs. I actually opened 2 packs. I got a mantle in the second pack. I didn't get to keep it. I was opening. I was working for John Brochini, and he was nice enough to let me open some of the packs. I got a mantle in the second pack and was like, don't we have a rule that you can keep what you open from the pack?
Well, I will say this. The guy that owned those unopened packs that sold them to Mr. Mint, from what I understand, he comes into that same LCS I was talking about that also turned away the unopened boxes. But anyway, the guy comes in there every once in a while. He says maybe twice a year. He still has a whole bunch of those packs still. He is saving them for his grandchildren's college education. So can you imagine he's got all these 54, 55 Bowman packs still? He didn't sell them all.
You got that much money for them then? I shudder what he's going to get for them now.
I know.
He's paying for their education. He's paying for their grandkids' education of the grandkids he's going to pay for the education of.
Yes.
So I was going to say, wasn't the 52 Bowman packs sold for $20,000, or at least the spots on that one, if I remember correctly? So imagine how many packs. I mean, it wouldn't be worth $20,000, but it's a lot of money.
I know it boggles my mind to think about it. That this guy, at least he was smart enough not to sell all of them. He still held on to some of them. And from what I heard is, I think that there was a construction company that was tearing down this warehouse where these cards were, and they came across these cards and they knew this one guy that collected cards, and they contacted him, and he ended up, making a deal and getting them. So, man, that was a coup right there.
Sometimes, that's why sometimes people say you tell everybody you know about that you do something with cards. Mm-hmm. Because if you hit the once in a lifetime thing, you win.
Oh yeah. It's really funny because, it seems like this area where I live seems to be, I won't say the center of finds, but it's definitely been a hotbed over the years. And I guess what really kind of gets to me is, especially when all that unopened wax showed up, is like, man, this stuff has been here all these years and I never knew it. Nobody ever knew it. You feel so, I don't know, you just feel like, man, how did I not know this?
But that happens all the time. I remember when a caramel, a really nice condition caramel card find that Heritage sold a few years ago was found in Ohio. And my good friend Pat Blanford, who works for Kevin Savage, they're like 30, 40 minutes from this person's house. And they had no idea, and that person never went in, and they'd advertise, and they never even got a whiff of those cards. And they would have loved to have had those cards. You don't even know sometimes what's next door to you.
No, you don't. I remember, back in the day, advertising in newspapers. Myself and other collectors in town, we would advertise in papers, and I would actually go to out of town with some friends of mine, and we would like rent a hotel room, saying, "Hey, we buy baseball cards," and put that ad in the local paper, and you would be surprised how many cards you would get on a weekend like that.
Well, our friend and fellow colleague, Dr. Jim Beckett, talks about some of the buying trips he made back in the day that very way. He got them in the 70s, and we actually, just before he sold the company, it was like a nostalgia trip. He and Gervis, and they brought me along just for the fun of it. There was a TriStar show where Jeff Rosenberg, who's very hobby savvy and very hobby conscious, brought back all the dealers that were still in good standing, that used to do the old Houston show before they started renting shows, gave them a really nice area to set up in, and then had basically, not a happy hour, but a hospitality room that night for people like that. And we were invited. And I think I stayed up till 2 a.m. hearing the stories of the legendary guys in Texas, Copa and Kennedy. And they would go in the 60s and 70s and drive all around, Houston and that area, and come up with collections. And they would talk about how much stuff they found in those days. Oh
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I just went along just to help. I wasn't a buyer. I was just a kid. But the guys who were the collectors that had the money, the guys that were buying, it was amazing, the vintage stuff. Well, of course, back in the 70s, it wasn't as vintage as it is now. But it was still, you'd still see a lot of 50s and 60s, Bowman and Topps baseball cards and other sports, of course. But, it just boggled my mind. I mean, Mickey Mantle cards, Willie Mays. I mean, oh my gosh, it was just incredible to see all those cards.
I could buy commons. There was a store. The person actually knew my father, and we'd go a couple times a month. I was buying late 60s commons at 3 cents each.
Wow.
I mean, and I turned them at 15 cents each because that's 5x my money. Of course,
yeah.
Now, it'd be a little better than that, but that's how prices were in those days. Money mattered, but everything was much cheaper. Herman just asked a really good question. Herman, believe it or not, there's still a lot of stuff that we don't know about.
There's a ton still out there. I guarantee you.
And I mentioned Dr. Beckett's name earlier. And just so and I've posted this, and just so everybody knows, especially the followers of Hobby Hotline, Dr. Jim was the recipient of the Saber Baseball Card Committee. I'm just going to call it like Man of the Year award. It's not the exact title, but it's like a lifetime award, and he was honored this year as the winner. And there's going to be a Zoom ceremony, Saber Card Award. Thank you. On Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 Central, 1 Mountain, noon Pacific. And if you follow me either on Twitter, and I'll try to repost it, and on Facebook, I posted a link to the ceremony. And we'd love to have it. We also want to congratulate Jim on that, because that's an honor that he should have been the first year. And I'm still a little shocked that it took them 3 years to finally get around to putting the right person who should have been the first year.
Yeah, I want to know who the other two were.
The other two are Mike Aronstein, and Mike's done a lot in the hobby. So, I mean, it's a good choice, and Jim's very gracious about it. And he says and the other is Doug McWilliams. Doug McWilliams took a ton of photographs, produced card sets, did a lot, was a very active hobbyist. I mean, they're both very worthy. But, I like to point out, a lot of us wouldn't be where we are today. And when I use we wouldn't be, I'm talking about as a hobby, without the work Jim did.
I totally agree with that.
A man of integrity basically is the most important person in the hobby. It was really a double boom for the hobby.
Yeah, I consider Dr. Beckett our modern day Jefferson Burdick for sure. That's how I look at it.
And I'm seeing Refractors Jones about sitting with Rosen at the Pittsburgh show. Al knew the business, and Al was really good. He knew if he saw a collection, how much he could pay for it, who he would turn it to, and how much money he could get out of it. He had done so much of it. In the 80s, he would say he's spending $5, $6, $7 million a year. Well, when you're spending that much in the 80s on cards, you have a pretty good idea of the market. Unfortunately, in the 90s, it slowed down on so many levels, but he knew who could do what where.
Mhm.
You know, he'd buy a collection. Okay, you're getting this, you're getting this, you're getting this, and every once in a while I get a leftover for fun, which was fine.
I heard he had some great bargain bins as well, like all the
He
stuff
did.
he did.
Al was. I actually sat next to him 3 straight years on the coming back from the National on an airplane, and I learned a lot from Al. And Al was a very interesting person. Once you saw him in private, he wasn't that boisterous person. He was very respectful, very good at teaching you things too. And I learned a lot from Al. And so I have a lot of respect for him. And one thing with is that anytime I mention him, and anytime I've written about Al, I've gotten more response to that, even many years now after he's passed. I think it's 6, 7 years after he's passed, than I do from talking about anything else I've ever talked about.
So I got a question for you. You said you obviously learned a few lessons from him. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
The biggest lesson I ever learned is in this hobby. It's not what you sell the card for. It's what you buy it for.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know what you buy it for, then you know what you can sell it for. If I buy, we were talking about negotiation earlier. If I buy a deal, if somebody comes up with me and I come up with $20,000 for a deal, and I know the deal's worth $150,000, but I want to turn it over quicker, and I say, Ryan, I got a deal for you. I'm into it at 20, give me 40, and it's $150,000. You'll look at it and say, okay, and I'm just, this is play money, so I'm going to assume we both can afford this. Okay, done. And yet you're getting a great deal. You're going to be able to either bulk it out or, make some money. And I've doubled my money without a lot of work. And that's why the most important thing he ever taught me in this business, and I learned from other people, is not what you sell it for, it's what you buy it for.
Yeah, he came to Memphis one time. The same guys that I went out with, that went to the hotel rooms and all that to buy cards. He came to one of those guys' house and was making a deal with him. And they invited me over to have dinner with him. I will say this: he was very, very nice, but he was a very picky eater, because he was kind of like me. He didn't want his food to touch. So I distinctly remember that.
Believe it or not, I'm the same way too. I eat things one at a time.
Me too.
I know other people that'll do, a piece of meat, then a piece of vegetable, then a part of the salad. No, I'll have my salad first. And sometimes, depending on where I eat the salad, I may just do the lettuce first or the tomatoes first, then the lettuce, then the cucumbers or something like that, then the grilled chicken on the salad.
Yeah, I kind of
I can be monkish.
I love you for a reason.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes to go in the show. So are there any other topics you all want to bring up?
Well, we talked about Whatnot and them buying a new box, right? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned, I was listening to Jeremy Lee interviewing a venture capitalist who has his hand in 10 different hobby companies. Whatnot's valuation was $3.7 billion with a B dollars. Wow. So they can kind of afford to do things like that.
Oh, I had no idea.
Billion. I remember they started 2-3 years ago, right?
Yeah, he says, and it was really interesting to hear the venture capitalist or the private. Actually, he was a private equity guy talk about these companies he was involved in, and the thing is, we're talking about old school stories, which is great for a lot of people, but there's a lot of exciting things going on. There it is, 3.7 billion, right on cue.
I was on TechCrunch too. I got to read that article.
Wow.
So one of the things is that there's a lot of really exciting, and Ryan, please DM me. You said you knew the article, so please DM me.
No, I said I didn't. I said I got to read on the article.
No, we'll read about it, but DM me the link after you read it too.
I'm going to find it after this live stream. I'm curious. I got to watch that Jeremy Lee episode. I'm curious what companies he's invested in.
Yeah, I usually don't watch his show, but I saw that. I said, I'm watching that, and I'm glad I did. But what really impressed me in something is that, I'm just going to say, Logan and I are a bit younger than you, Ryan. That's obviously a joke. But it's so exciting to see the new technology coming into the hobby. There's so many new things coming in. And, both of you went to the National. Was there something that you saw, either of you saw new technology at the National that really impressed you?
I think what impressed me was Zero Cool's setup. I know the music and everything like that got a little bit annoying, but all the LED panels that they had, the graphics on there, all the different events, like every time I was walking by the corporate area, that stood out to me right away because I'm like, gone to two other nationals, or I should say two other national events, and there's nothing like that. This year they brought that out there, and I think it's pretty cool and innovative.
I like that video cube. That was a very, very cool thing.
The no signal as well. Yes, that was the first at the National.
Yes, well, I heard about that it was really hard to even make phone calls at the National.
Yep, you couldn't even text. It was really bad.
Yeah, I couldn't get a hold of my son. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. I think John Newman said that he was texting a picture to his son early in the day, and it didn't go out till he actually left the facility. It was bad. It was really bad. You couldn't do any comps. You couldn't look up anything. You literally could not do a thing.
Yeah, so for somebody like me who doesn't use technology, that probably would have been the greatest show in the world. I just use what I know and go from there.
Yeah, I was just amazed.
We're approaching the top of the hour, so thank you all for being such a great guest. Thank you all for such a fun chat. Thank you, John Keating, for doing a great job as the engineer and the constant thread of new images you brought up as we were making the discussion. So we appreciate that. So Logan, we'll lead off with you. Any final thoughts?
I do have one thought about the current situation that happened in Dallas with the flooding. I just want to let everybody know that we're thinking about those people and prayers to all the people that were affected. I take it, Rich, that you were okay.
Yeah, we were. The funniest thing is my wonderful mini Chihuahua Tater Tot, 13 years old, 5.5 pounds. He usually goes out once a night in the middle of the night. Usually when Daddy goes to the bathroom, he then decides it's a good time for him to go outside. I open the door for him. He takes one look. He hears the weather and says, "If you think I'm going out on this, you are crazy." He turns around and goes back to bed, and I say, "That sounds like a good deal to me." And so we got some rain, but we didn't get any flooding here. In fact, we got minimal rain compared to downtown Dallas.
Wow. Yeah, because I heard it was like, 10 inches or something?
Like 10 inches. We got supposedly maybe 1 inch in Plano.
Oh, wow. So that was very isolated then, for sure.
I saw a picture of the river before and after the flooding. I was like, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, there were some houses that got flooded. There were some really areas that really got hit hard. I just consider fortunate that we got the lawn looks so much nicer, and we'll leave it at that. It didn't really get as bad as a lot of areas. So I just knocked on wood that we had no real problems, and I was glad about that. And then, of course, the next night, in Plano, we can use our sprinklers on Monday. So I had the sprinklers on Monday, set up to work on Monday. So it got more rain, but again, it didn't get overly drenched. Ryan, do you have any final thoughts?
I'll answer the two questions in the chat. I think it's the same winners as the first original 86 block.
It is.
I do think Pools gets 700 home runs. I think the MLB will give him some juiced balls, so that way he can hit 700, and it's good PR for the MLB, especially going into the postseason. Make an event out of it and everything like that. All the news coverage on ESPN as well as other mainstream channels leading up to home run number 700.
And I'd like to see Judge get to 62 homers. I don't think he'll get to 73, but 62 would set a Yankee record, and I'd be just as happy with that. So, we'd love to see that. Thank you for a great chat. Really great comments from everybody. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, John Keating. And until Saturday, where we'll have a new group of hosts, thank you again for listening or watching, and we'll see you soon.